Scene Mom says, welcome to the new podcast from former Phoenix radio host Danny Cutler. Each week, bringing you independent music, industry news, the occasional interview, and other fun segments. Let's get to it. Scene Mom says hello and welcome to episode number 55. I'm your host, Danny Cutler, and we're going to do things a little different this week. I actually have an interview for you. Don't know if I'm going to post the video, but definitely the audio as you are listening right now, obviously. But I wanted to get this in because, as I mentioned in last week's show, going to be out of town as you're listening to this. I'm looking for a baseball field in Iowa right now, visiting family. So feel the dreams, baby. But but I wanted to get this interview done because my good friend that I've known, which still saying it out loud is crazy, over 20 years, having known Jack Mangan, as I butcher his name. Yes, I've known him for 20 years, I swear. He just launched SLAM, which stands for Support Life and Music, which is going to be an amazing resource for artists, whether they're mainstream, independent, just artists in general. So welcome, Jack. How are you?
Thanks. No, it's great to see you. I guess to keep the references going, you built it and I came. So here I am.
There we go. There
yes.
we go.
Yes.
I haven't even left yet. And I feel like next week, I should anticipate. So we drove through some cornfields. A lot of cornfields.
Yeah, don't go into the corn.
No, stay out of the corn. There might be children there. There's another reference, but
I know, showing her age.
Well, thank you for meeting with me on short notice as I was prepping ahead in my podcasts. SLAM is amazing. I mean, just a few weeks, gosh, it's probably been a month now when me and George were on your show. George and I were on your show.
Yeah, it's about a month. Yeah.
So I'm glad that you finally launched. Before we get into all the nitty gritty about SLAM, I want to start with your background. And I met you in the podcast community back in the early aughts, 2004, probably.
Somewhere around there.
Over 20 years. And the only podcast that I ever do from you has been Deadpan, which, amazingly successful, leading to meetups from people all over the country would come. Unfortunately, I never was able to attend one, but, it was a big deal. So that's all I really know about your background. And so tell us, what is your connection? How did you get started in the music industry specifically?
Sure. Oh, the balloons are here.
For those listening, there's this balloon that keeps flying down into his video. It's hilarious.
Yes, it's I was so happy to be on this podcast with you, Danny. I got balloons. So anyway, yeah. Well, first of all, let me thank you so much for having me on. It's really, really a great honor. Really appreciate it. And you've been doing great work for as long as I've known you, and it's really great. So to answer your question though, I got my start. I mean, I've been a musician as long, since I was a teenager. I've been a musician. I've been around music since I was a college DJ. This doesn't really count, but I was the same Goody employee and manager forever.
I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you did radio. Had no idea. Learned something new. Yeah.
Well, it was a very tiny, the signal didn't even get off campus, but yeah, I did. So whoever was in the cafeteria loved my show. I did that in the 90s. And then, Danny and I met through the podcast world. We had a lot of podcast friends in common, also Phoenix in common. I was heavily involved with Dragon Page, which is, not whether that's the defunct group, but yeah, they did Slice of Sci-Fi, Winging It, and a whole host of shows. My show Deadpan I had an incredible run. It's a great community of people who are still together, and there's still, we had people travel from around, it's an international group of people who would get together for Deadpan meetups in Phoenix and all over. It's been a hell of a ride. So that's been great. But through deadpan. It was a lot of skits and community input, but also a lot of interviews of people from all across the spectrum. Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson was one of my first big interviews, which I still blown away. In the music world, talked to a couple of people. Jennifer Batten was one of my early ones. One of the first times I was ever kind of starstruck. It's like, oh my gosh, Jennifer Batten, Michael Jackson's guitar player. If you don't know who that is, she's amazing. But so I also started writing. Now, a former bandmate had started a website that would change from That So Metal to Metal Asylum. His name is Rich Catino, and he's kind of become a big shot in his own way in the heavy metal world. And he asked me if I was interested in contributing to Metal Asylum, kind of reviews and interviews and that kind of thing. So he and I kind of, this is not me taking credit where it's not due. Rich built Metal Asylum. That's definitely his, but he and I worked together to really make it something pretty big. And especially during pandemic, we did a lot of good interviews, that kind of thing. We interviewed a lot of big people in the heavy metal world. In 2020, I was invited to be on the board at the Metal Hall of Fame. I do a lot of work with them. Pat Gesualdo is the founder of that. He does a lot of incredible work with the Metal Hall of Fame. So that's kind of how I've built up my music resume over the years, is through that stuff. And then, it just, in the last year or so, I just kind of recognized that I really wanted to kind of give back. I mean, I've always felt like music was where my heart was and where my passion was and where I wanted my day job to be as well. And I just felt like there was this huge need. And I know we'll get to this. I won't take up all the oxygen talking about it, but that's kind of where
it's all about you, Jack. You're taking up the oxygen in this episode. It's all you. You're not interviewing. You're the interviewee.
I know it's a weird thing, isn't it? But
I feel that way too.
Yeah, but so that's really what I recognize. There's a need. There's a lot of the music life is hard. I don't want to just say it's easy for everyone except musicians, but life is hard. And the music life has its own particular difficulties and challenges. And there are a lot of just, unhappy realities and truths and facts about what's going on in the music world. So I just felt like I could address that. So I started the nonprofit. I actually formed I don't know the proper term. I got the LLC in summer of 2024 and started to work behind the scenes on it towards the end of 2024. In January, I really started laying the groundwork, getting people on the advisory council or, AKA the board, and started talking to musicians and industry folks about helping out. And then, here we are in April 2025. That's when I've started to kind of say, so the wheels have been turning, but this is when I started just to say, hey, you know what? We're live. Let's make this a thing. So,
yeah. So to back up just a little bit, what was that final moment where you were like, okay, artists need help and I want to, actually, let's back up even more. So SLAM stands for Support Life in Music. So what is it? What is SLAM? Like, what is the purpose?
Right. Well, the purpose, now that it's grown up as much as it has, we really, the suicide numbers in music are at a crisis level, honestly. We've all heard of the famous ones, and had our hearts broken by many of them, whether they're famous or not. But the numbers at all levels are astounding. But that actually, I came into that. It's kind of one of those accepted truths. Like, this is something that's happening in the world, and even people I've spoken to, I knew that this was an issue in the music world. So and of course, substance abuse and other forms of self-destruction. The Sid Barrett ways of self-destructing. This is not a new story, but I just felt like for too long it's kind of been accepted, like, oh, starving artist, the tortured artist,
or when you see
that's
an
just
artist who has committed suicide or passed away, everyone automatically goes, oh, drugs, and that's very unfair, but that's where everyone's mind goes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There's all the negative associations, like, well, what an idiot, they had everything, like they weren't. So I wish I had their problems. Like, these are the things that I want, to change in our culture, whether it's musicians or just everyone needs to kind of be aware that these problems are legitimate, and sure, they're different from yours and mine. But that doesn't mean they're not valid.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what what spurred Slam. I mean, actually, what's originally it was more focused on just improving musicians' lives, making their lives less just difficult. I'd seen the struggles that bands had. I'd remember interviewing a band that came to Phoenix. They drove from California to Phoenix for their gig in June. So you know what it's like in June in Phoenix. They drove across that desert in the tour bus that had no air. Their air conditioner had broken. So by the time they got there, I mean, they were very candid, great people. They were very candid. They were saying, this is really hard. Like this is making us question this lifestyle. This is like, can we keep doing this kind of thing as we get older and older? But, so that was the kind of thing that inspired it. But as I said, I realized, I think that is a need. And that's part of Slam wants to make life better for musicians at all levels. But also, as I said, the thing we really want to tackle is we really want to save lives. We want to fight back against the real scourges of suicide and just the substance abuse that's just wrecking people's lives in this industry that's taken for granted. People think like, oh, that's just part of the lifestyle. Like, but and sure, maybe it will always be there, but yeah, you don't have to. It's not a requirement. You don't have to self-destruct to be a great musician. And
right, and that's part of. I mean, there's this, the whole negative stigma. Of course, it's great that Slam will help to maybe change that, which I think is great. And I also feel like just as a whole, at least in the past, I mean, even right before COVID, I mean, you had the whole Me Too campaign going on, and that of course dealt with women and sexual assault and things like that. But mental health became a very big deal, and it became less of this taboo that nobody talks about, and people started opening up a lot more. And then, we hit COVID in 2020, and it opened up even more because where is everybody? Stuck at home, musicians not playing gigs, and nobody was used to that. Nobody knew how to adjust to that. And so everyone was a lot more open about talking about mental health. So I think this is just another way using Slam to carry on with that, to make sure that just because we have come out of it a lot, it doesn't change the fact that these are still issues and there's still things that need to be changed, and musicians still need help, and getting to the root of the problem too. I mean, you talk about that band that drove across the desert. Well, these are all factors that affect somebody's mental health. And how do most people deal with things that are driving them crazy? Well, a lot of people will go and start drinking, or they'll start doing drugs, or they'll do things to alleviate the issue and not have to think about it. And so it all works together, unfortunately, to get to that point where they end up doing something permanently destructive to themselves.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly said. Yeah, and you're right. There are 1,000 things. I mean, if I were to list them, we'd be here for hours. So to list all the ways.
Yeah, this is day 4 of my interview with Jack on the problems with everybody.
Right, number 687.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so I mean, yeah, I definitely see your passion and wanting to help support the music community, which definitely needs the support. And there's resources out there, but a lot of the resources really tend to focus on, that I've seen, mainstream. It's a big thing, like ASCAP is doing something, or big labels do something. Music Cares is great. I think more indie musicians, or I think Music Cares needs to focus and show a little more support to indie musicians, because they tend to be, I mean, they do a lot of great work. I'm not putting that down. Of course, they do some amazing work, but I feel like there isn't something that is more centered around the independent musician. So, and that's where Slam can come in.
Yeah, no, I'm glad Music Cares does do incredible work. And the early my early vision for Slam was very close to what Music Cares does. Music Cares is like giving money to musicians to get certain needed surgeries and that kind of thing. And so, but
I mean, during the LA fires, they were providing instruments and money and help to musicians. So, I mean, yeah, believe me, I'm not knocking them.
Right. No, I think they do great work. But yeah, it's different. It is different from Slam because we have a much more specific focus. And as you said, without knocking, an organization that's done a lot of good, we want to be for everyone. We're not, they're sponsored by the Grammys, which again, that doesn't mean they're bad. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good kudos to the Grammys for doing some good and giving back. But yeah, so our missions are just a little bit different, I guess is kind of what I'm
Yeah.
getting at.
What?
Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead. So,
Yeah. What do you think, other than the things we've talked about, and it might still be what we've already talked about, um, maybe some of the biggest challenges that an independent artist has today, like more specifically?
well, there are a lot of challenges. I think so the specific things are just the fact that over decades the money has just not been there. You look at Grizzly Bear as a band I often cite, who were the biggest indie band in the world in the early 2000s, but there were still four guys living in a one bedroom apartment, with one bed. And they were huge at the time. So there's the money's it's really challenging. It's a requirement. And I know there's some people, maybe some people listening going, "Oh, boo hoo," but you cannot. It's a very small percentage. In fact, it's 11% of the population of the music world can make music as their job. And I'm not talking about like buying mansions and stuff. I mean like making ends meet through music. And
Right.
that's a small, like, imagine if, how many of us have been in the software world. Imagine if, like, well, 11% of us will be able to pay the rent through this job. The other 89% will need to do something else. Like so that's really a huge challenge. And as you said, it's hard. Stability of life is hard because music, when you have some degree of success, touring is a huge part of that world. It's not a requirement, but it's a huge part of it, which means being away from loved ones and families and that day job that wants you to be there.
Yeah.
Not every day job will. I can tell you, most software jobs would say, well, if you're not going to be around if you're taking 3 months off to tour, then you're fired. So
Right.
not everyone. There's no other exceptions, but I think
And
it's
then if you have a band of four people having to coordinate those schedules when everybody's got the day job.
yeah, and I'm reading a great book called Band People by Franz Nicolay, who was from the band The Hold Steady, and he's done some other stuff, and talks a lot about how so many people get into bands. I mean, think about your high school band. You get into this band with your buddies, and you think like it's all going to just work out. We're just going to become huge. Our song is going to hit the radio and become huge. Like, no, you guys need to recognize this as a business, guys and girls. You get into a band, you're partners with these people, and that's why I don't think it's a coincidence that you look at some of the great success stories like REM, Rush. These are bands that just said from the get go, this is a partnership, and we're partnering. And even the Beatles, to some extent, I know that they blew
Yeah.
up, famously,
Yeah.
um, but still, the bands that have been successful have said like, look, we're this is going to be handled like a business, and we're gonna, we'll maintain our friendships, but this is going to be handled like a business. I think
Well, it
that
needs
that's
to be. It's the only way. If you're going to make music your career, it's like launching a business. It's a small business. I mean, I had to go through it when I launched my marketing business. It's you have to put it out there. And the difference is creatives have a hard time getting out of their creative space to put on the business hat and run it that way. So
yes,
I
no,
can
that's
see
well said.
where, yeah, yeah. So it's very difficult, but all of this adds to the frustrations because I think musicians tend to have a problem with how to be a career musician in the fact that they just want to have fun, but they also, I think there's still a lot of hope that they are just going to have that hit single and they're suddenly going to make it big. They see others doing it. It's like, I mean, I'm trying to think of somebody recently who just made it off of like TikTok or YouTube. And the first person who comes to mind is like Jelly Roll, right? I mean, he did some video on YouTube and now look at him, right? And that isn't how it works at all.
Right,
So, and all that goes, it just ends up piling on because if you really want it to work and you're frustrated with the day job, then all of this is going to pile up. And then again, you come right back to how are you going to numb yourself and how are you going to get through it? And then, you know, everything
right,
falls. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
Uh,
yeah, the coping mechanisms are. I mean, none
yeah.
of us are really well equipped. But yeah,
Well,
so
where
yeah,
I can see Slam helping a lot is not just by providing those resources, a place for somebody to go, but maybe some sort of personal type, not really like one-on-one therapy type thing, but this leads to my next question. Beyond being just this online resource, how do you envision Slam supporting artists with many of these challenges?
I'm so glad you asked. So yeah, it's so our programs right now while we're in our early pocket change days is we meaning there's not a lot of funding there at this point. So like, what we're doing right now is we're doing Slam Summit panels, which is kind of like what if now I'll plug. I had a great conversation with George Robb and this great DJ named Danny Cutler.
Never heard of her.
No, she's a legend. So you should know her. So
in her own mind, to go back to my old podcast.
No, that kind of thing is exactly what I want to have on. What I want to do is I have panels of musicians and people who are influencers and noteworthies in the music industry. Like I'm putting together an episode of all PR people to come on and talk, and all band managers to come on and talk.
Oh,
and
fantastic.
but it's not just a fun interview. Like, hey, here's behind the scenes. It's like, no, this is there's always going to be that band. In fact, I just talked to a guy named Jarvis Weatherby from the band Night Demon, who also is a band manager. And he floored me with his answers about this. He talked about getting sober and just giving advice saying, if you're feeling like you are, you're on the balcony and you want to step off, he said, just step away, go to bed and, wake up. And like that kind of thing is invaluable. Mark Lopes is a singer from the band Metal Church, and he's been with Ross the Boss and Let Us Pray, and an incredible voice. We had him on, and he told a similar story. And what I loved that he said, and this really, I've been quoting him a lot. He said after we talked for a while, he said, I hope that other musicians hear this and can recognize that they're not alone. And I was like, that's almost our mission statement. So these Slam Summits will be people who've lived the life. People, there will be famous people. There'll also be, people who are, like borderline famous, and people who are not famous at all, but who know what they're talking
like
about.
Me.
Like me. And
like
but
us.
also
Yeah.
but also like people who've done studies, like academics, professors, people who've researched this kind of thing, so people can get information from these and say, okay, there's hope here. Someone who's maybe not, and then so that's the kind of that's our first program that we're doing. A future program we want to do is have an online AA style meeting where basically it's a support group meeting where it'll be moderated, it'll be safe, and there'll be people there who are qualified to kind of lead that kind of a thing. But it'll be also you can dial in anonymously, you can dial in and be on camera if you want, appropriately, of course. There'll be all kinds of rules to protect everyone and each other. But like that kind of thing, I think would be huge. It will not would be. It's going to be huge. It's going to be a really helpful thing to know. Like I think if someone says I can't make, I'm on tour, I can't make it to my AA meeting because I know a lot of people really cherish AA, that kind of thing, or I can't make it to my in-person meeting in the town where I live. Like I think that is going to be a huge thing. Those are two of our early programs that are really, I think, are really going to make a big difference in the world and help musicians, be direct assistance for musicians. And then, you're right that down the road, there'll be a lot more interactive stuff. We'll have the infrastructure where people can call and say, I need to talk to someone, and we'll be able to make that connection.
Yeah.
And I mean, to this, like, if you email me right now and say I need help, I will make the connection for you. But we don't have the infrastructure to do this. Like, we don't have volunteers manning the phone lines for that kind of thing right now.
Right. Yeah.
So that's there are other programs. There's a zillion other programs and things we have in mind, and fun things even that we have in mind. But that's the direct answer to your question, is what we're doing to help right now. Those are going to be released. By the way, the Slam Summits are going to be released, and interviews and those kind of things are going to be released through podcasts, through audio podcasts like this one, through YouTube videos. So subscribe to those. And there will be online articles as well. Sometimes, in fact, I've gotten a few where it's only in written form. I had the son of a musician who passed away. He typed something up and sent me a couple of paragraphs talking about his father's career. So, that's the kind of thing. So it's through the website, it's through YouTube, and through our podcast is where those things are going to be made available. And we're going to keep growing.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, there's so much you're just getting started. So like, this is the exciting time. It's like, how do we build on this? What what do you need from the public to like right now to get Slam to grow even more?
I need 1.5 million. No, I need
$1 million.
that's right. Yes. With pinky to that. No, I mean, to be blunt, I know I say this joke.
Money,
Of
yes,
course,
is like probably the top thing.
yeah, as any nonprofit does need funds to do these things. And again, it's I know people are skeptical of nonprofits because I mean there are all kinds of stories about these misuse and abuse of these kinds of things. The money will go towards our programs and infrastructure and and getting staff of good people in place, and doing things like one of our visions. So hang on, I'm swerving away from your question. I'm gonna veer
It's all
back
good.
around. But so I mean, one of the things that we really want to do is do some kind of charity type recordings, like maybe even a We Are the World type of thing. So like that's going to take money though. Like we can't even studios are like, hey, we can donate some of our time. Like they can't. It's gonna cost money.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so the money's going to go towards all good things, but that is actually part of 2025 for Slam. Other things, we really need also people in the industry are taking this seriously. I've gotten great responses from people around the industry, but for this to really spread and for our message to spread and be successful and impactful and reach the people it needs to reach, yeah, we need people to just do the classic things of subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us, talk about us, spread the word. Uh, and I'm the type of person. This is what I did with my podcast. I always said, if you've got an idea, I want to hear it. Like I was never like, no, stay on your side of the gate. No, if you've got an idea, then I want to hear it. Talk to me, and we'll if it fits Slam's vision. I don't want to do 4,000 things, but if it's something
Sure.
that that,
Yeah.
that helps basically the bottom line of keeping artists safe and towards the pursuit of happiness instead of the pursuit of despair and a bad end. That's what if so. Social media, follow us on social media, support us, and help spread the word. Those are the things I would say. We have Facebook, we have Blue Sky, YouTube, and Instagram.
Is
And
it all, is it written out support life in music or is it Slam?
it's mostly written out support life and music.
Okay.
Blue Sky had a character limit, so it would have been support life and Musi. So it's and Blue Sky it's SLAM. But yeah, I mean, Google will be your friend on this.
Well, the website is.
The website is supportlifeandmusic.org, which yes, and
And
yeah, there are links to everything from there.
excellent. Excellent. Oh, I'm so excited about this project, Jack.
Well,
And
thank you.
I'm happy to be a part of it in some way, small or large. And like I said, it was great to help maybe kick it off a little bit with the interview that myself and George Rob were a part of. It's a great conversation, and I have that all over my social media as well because it was a good conversation, not just because it was with you and George, but we had a good talk. It was a very good talk. We're all the goal for everyone is the same, right? We want to support our independent artists because we know the struggle from everything from, like you said, mental health to health care, which that definitely falls under, but
Mm-hmm.
even just how to survive and be that career musician where you can make ends meet versus, getting over that stigma of like, this is my side gig, this is my hobby, which it doesn't have to be.
Right.
So I think we all have that goal, and that's where Slam can definitely help.
Yeah, again, you're stating everything perfectly, Dan. In fact, I'm just going to be quiet the rest of the time because I think you're saying it all better than I am.
You don't have to be quiet. We're almost done.
No, but I think that's perfectly stated. Yeah, your support is really, really appreciated. It means a lot. I know how impactful. I know you're being modest, but you've really made a huge impact in the Phoenix music scene. I know you're making waves in Massachusetts and globally and nationally. So I think it's that kind of thing is absolutely essential to us kind of getting out there. And as I said, I've gotten this kind of response from so many people who are in the industry. People really believe in the message and the mission. And yeah, that's kind of what it's all about. One other thing I'll say along the lines of what you just talked about, pardon me being scattered all with,
It's
but
okay.
it's actually something that I'm kind of repeating a message that came up when you and I talked with George Hrab. By the way, George Hrab is amazing,
Yes,
and he
he
had
is.
great insights. We talked about. I hope that in the future we can get rid of this perception that if you're not a multimillionaire from your music, if you're just like a middle class living a middle class life, that you've failed. Like that's a huge win if you can make money and put food on the table and pay the rent through your music. That is a win. That is not a fail, and you should be proud until the end of your days if you can
Yeah.
do that. So don't we gotta that's another stigma that's got to go away. That
Yeah.
that yeah.
Musicians have to realize that as much as they want to be original and have original music, it's okay if you go and you do a residency somewhere for a month and play covers, or it's okay. I mean, it's about wanting to sustain yourself, and sometimes you have to do that. And everybody loves covers. Even musicians love covers. I mean, I hear so many covers from musicians, and they just have a good time doing it, because a lot of it for them is, I mean, I'm getting totally off subject here, but a lot of it for them is, I mean, I'm scatterbrained too, Jack. They play the artists that they love, that they grew up with, that they love, that, and then that shows. And then you like intertwine a little, originals into it. But the bottom line is it's about having that career, and it's not a stigma. It's called a job, and having work and doing what you love, what you want to do, and not, unless you enjoy waiting tables or working that 9 to 5 when you don't have time to be able to focus on the thing you want to focus on. Well, great. But if you want to do music full time, you have to get off that, cloud of, all right, we're going to tour with Green Day or whatever, because it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, well, yeah. Again, well said. Yeah, we talked to an Irish musician named Eamon O'Neill who talked about sometimes you have to play Wonderwall. He said, "I want to go out there to my gigs and play my favorite Iron Maiden songs, but sometimes you have to play Wonderwall." But you know what? I will also. I'm not. These are now my words. Even if you don't, it's fun to play Wonderwall. Even if you don't even like the song, I have played out many gigs, and I've agreed with gritted teeth to play songs I don't like, and I have a blast doing it. So
Yeah.
just yeah, as you said, I mean, you enjoy music, it feels great to play the music. Music is therapy for a lot of people. It's therapeutic to
Yes.
play music and listen to it. So just embrace all of that and enjoy it. So just to follow up on what you're saying,
Yeah. So the
I
bottom
agree.
line is, if somebody yells Freebird, play Freebird. You can complain about it later.
Yes, be prepared for Freebird. Yes.
Oh my gosh, Jack Mangan, this has been wonderful speaking with you again. And I'm so excited for Support Life in Music. And I will, of course, in the show notes, have links to all the things. And anyone who wants to get involved, the quickest way to start getting involved is just follow Slam on social media and help us grow, help it grow. See, I already put myself as part of it. Help us grow. I'm already just put myself in there. I'm now involved.
Well, I'm going to hold you to that too. Yes, because
Well, I can edit this out.
no,
What? I never said that. I'm kidding.
no, no. Well, but yeah, thanks for all that, and yes, thanks to everyone listening. And your support is appreciated, and just also for the cynical folks out there, musicians do need this, and their problems are legitimate. And even if people who've made mistakes say like that guy just made $1 million and snorted it all up his nose. What do I care? Like, well, that's still a human issue. Like it's you could say, well, I care more about this other person who's suffering because of bad luck. Well, and okay, that's that you're entitled to that thought, but it's still the bottom line is there's still people who are suffering, that's still in pain and in danger, and
Yeah.
and at risk. So let's help these people.
It's
And
about
that's
the reasons why they got to that point, and part of Slam is helping musicians before they get to that point.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. My spokesperson. Yes.
That's me. I am now a slam spokesperson. Yeah. All right, Jack, thank you so much for being on the show. And I know we're going to talk again very soon.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been fun. It's been an honor. It's great. Oh, as always, Danny, great talking to you. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Scene Mom Says podcast. Intro, outro music is Look Good for the Radio by Fairy Bones. Learn more about Danny and the show at dannycutler.com.